Hey, when exactly is her day of the terminal prognosis? Can't we just send her to the hospital already? They said 6 months, so it should be soon. I hope she just kicks the bucket already. I overheard this conversation between my MIL and my husband. Hearing their words, a certain conviction settled within me. They had been completely mistaken all along. Ever since the doctor gave me the terminal prognosis, I had devoted myself to my husband. Yet, the drastically changed daily life would never return. In fact, I had reached a point where I no longer wanted it to. 6 months later, I confronted my husband in the hospital room. Surely, you didn't still not know? As I revealed the truth, both my husband and MIL turned pale and speechless. Breaking the silence, I added more words. I warned you over and over again, didn't I? Watching the two of them, who couldn't accept the truth and began to rant, I looked down at them coldly and delivered the final blow. From this moment, our positions would reverse. My name is Mia. I work as an office clerk at a food processing company and met a man named Tim at a tennis club I joined as a hobby. We bonded over common interests, and he aggressively pursued me, but I, dedicated to my work, kept turning him down. When I talked about this with my parents, they were adamant, it's a chance. Get married quickly. Being in my mid-30s, I understood why my parents were pushing for marriage. Thinking it might be my last chance, I accepted Tim's persistent advances, and after a short courtship, we got married. At first, we were surrounded by blessings, and there were many times I felt glad to have married. But as time passed, I began to feel a growing distance between us. One day, past midnight, the sound of the front door being roughly opened made me stop washing the dishes. Wiping my hands, I turned to see Tim staggering home in a pitiful state. He plopped down on the couch, discarded his suit, and attempted to lie down. Speaking in a slightly sharp tone, I addressed him. Hey, Tim, doing the dishes today is your turn, right? Recognizing my presence for the first time, he responded, Oh, Mia. And continued in a sleepy voice, I'm tired from work. Can't you just handle it? You should do everything. Feeling a surge of anger, I quickly replied. We agreed before marriage, right? We'd share the chores because we both work. Come on, situations change after marriage. You should be more devoted and dutiful as a wife. What do you mean by dutiful as a wife? Asking in disbelief, I received an even more exasperating response. Think logically. What kind of wife makes her husband do housework? You're really thoughtless. Throwing out those words, he yawned loudly and started to sleep. I let out a deep sigh. I was also tired from work, so without pursuing it further, I quietly picked up his discarded clothes and covered him with a blanket. The strong smell of alcohol stung my nose. He claimed to be tired from work, but wasn't he just out drinking late as usual? With a feeling of frustration, I sighed deeply and went to bed alone. This routine continued until 3 months into our marriage. While dealing with the accumulated laundry on a day off, my MIL suddenly barged in without even ringing the doorbell. Not having been consulted about anything, I asked her what was going on, and she responded as if it were only natural. What? Is there a problem with me coming over? My MIL frowned, looking displeased, and plopped down onto the chair in the living room. It's only natural for a wife to take care of her MIL, isn't it? Hurry up and make me some tea. I'm also hungry. Reluctantly, I made tea for her and served some random snacks. Tim's MIL was an assertive person, and to be honest, I wasn't fond of her. Despite her constant grumbling, I managed to keep my composure and dealt with her. One day, Tim's health checkup results were left on the desk, so I took a look while tidying up. Though I couldn't understand all the details, the words, needs further examination, stood out. It seemed the results weren't good. Feeling a bit uneasy, I hurriedly told Tim to go for a follow-up. Those things are just traps for doctors to make money. They'll just lecture me on improving my diet, right? My efforts to persuade him were in vain as Tim half smiled and refused the re-examination. Still worried, I took a day off and, under the guise of my own health checkup, practically dragged Tim to the hospital. After undergoing the tests, Tim couldn't bear the wait and said, I have work, just pay the bill, leaving without hearing the results. Left alone in the waiting room, I was eventually called by the doctor, who had a serious expression. In a quiet room, the doctor conveyed the results. As he spoke, I widened my eyes and swallowed hard. With my heartbeat racing, I hurried home. When I got home, Tim wasn't there. Not knowing how to break the news to him, I replayed the doctor's words in my head as I waited for his return. Later that night, Tim came home drunk, and without looking him in the eye, I told him, "Tim, please listen calmly. Today's health checkup results, you've been given 6 months to live." A long silence followed, and when I glanced at his face, the heavily intoxicated Tim stood there in shock. It would take him time to accept what he was hearing, which was understandable. Then he weakly laughed and repeatedly said, I see. Feeling unbearable, I tried to talk about what we should do next, but Tim stopped me. "This is my own fault." "Ha! It's because I've been so wicked." Whether he was being self-deprecating or just couldn't accept the truth, he walked away from the living room with a creepy smile. I couldn't bring myself to say anything more, leaving the doctor's diagnostic report on the desk. The next day marked a complete change in our life. Considering Tim's health, I switched to a menu advised by the doctor. I reduced salt and ensured meals were rich in nutrients, using minimal seasonings and focusing on high-quality, additive-free foods for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Seeing this, Tim threw the food into the trash, shouting, "Don't make me eat this crap." Every meal I prepared was discarded without exception. Tim's behavior clearly changed after I informed him of the test results. "It's necessary for your health. Please eat. Why should I have to follow your rules? You eat out of the trash." Stunned by his harsh words, I couldn't respond. Why did I have to suffer this treatment when I was only thinking of Tim's well-being? Instead of eating my meals, he started dining out daily with his mother. When I asked her to stop this diet, she retorted, "A wife should let her husband eat whatever he likes." I felt there was nothing more I could do. Sometime later, Tim started complaining about feeling unwell and began missing or leaving work early. Worried, I suggested he visit the hospital, but he only shouted, "It's none of my business." His drastic change in behavior puzzled me. But Tim's recklessness didn't end there. He had even taken a mistress. "I'm going to die soon anyway. It doesn't matter." He would get excited and dress up when receiving texts from his mistress, ignoring my pleas for his health. His behavior escalated daily, and his spending grew increasingly extravagant. My MIL showed no sign of stopping him, and seeing Tim spiraling out of control, I knew I had to confront him. While out, I told Tim, who was about to use his credit card extensively, "I understand you're sad, but stop being so self-destructive." Tim looked at me with disdain and replied, "Sad? Who's sad? I'm actually having a blast." Feeling a bit unsettled by his words, I responded, "What are you talking about? We need to save money for the future. Stop doing things that shorten your life." "I told you, I don't care about you." Our conversation was going nowhere, and then my MIL intervened. "It's my son's money. He can spend it however he wants." No matter how much I pleaded, they wouldn't understand. As the 6 months approached, my heart grew weary. Then, 2 months later, while I was quietly tidying up at home, I overheard a conversation between my MIL and Tim. They were discussing how he should remarry his mistress once I was dead. The conversation was so disturbing that I couldn't help but listen. "So, when exactly is Mia's prognosis day? Can't we just send her to the hospital already? I don't know the details, but they said 6 months, so it should be soon. She should just hurry up and die." I was stunned by their conversation. Could it be that they thought the terminal prognosis was for me? That would explain Tim's attitude and our miscommunications. I had assumed Tim was being self-destructive because he couldn't accept his own terminal diagnosis and that my MIL couldn't accept it either. But if they thought I was the one with the prognosis, it made sense. Simultaneously, a simmering anger welled up within me. Tim and my MIL were truly despicable. I decided to confront them, stepping into the room where they were whispering. Tim looked surprised for a moment, then smirked. "So, you heard? Perfect timing." The 6 months are almost up. You don't seem fazed at all. Of course. You look quite haggard yourself. Ha! I'm feeling great because I get to give you this. Tim thrust a signed divorce paper at me. He continued. I'll let you be my wife until you die. Otherwise, I won't get the insurance money. Sign it and leave it on the desk. I'm going on a trip with my girlfriend tomorrow. A trip with your girlfriend? Apparently, he was planning a trip with his mistress, with my MIL's approval. Mia is a stranger now, so just get me a souvenir, she laughed. I was too shocked by their callousness to argue. The next day, while I was at work, I received a call from a local hospital. Tim had collapsed and was taken to the hospital by ambulance while enjoying their trip. The 6 months since Tim's prognosis were almost up. Though I had already mentally moved on, I felt responsible for not causing trouble for the hospital. So, I made the 3-hour trip to the hospital. When I arrived, the mistress who had enjoyed the trip with Tim was nowhere to be seen. Only my MIL was there, beside Tim. Seeing me, she started tearfully explaining how she rushed from her part-time job. I sat by Tim, who lay pale and asleep. After a few minutes, he woke up weakly and smiled faintly at us. Collapsing at a time like this, I'm really unlucky. Ha! To Tim's feeble attempt at humor, I calmly responded. You collapsed because it's a time like this. Are you still misunderstanding? Tim looked confused. Huh? Misunderstanding? About what? He asked, still in his usual manner. I sighed and continued. You can't be serious. Didn't I tell you repeatedly to check the test results yourself? Tim looked puzzled for a moment. Test results? I don't care about your test results. Why would I look at them? I cut him off, saying, that's not it, and looked him straight in the eyes to avoid any more misunderstandings. The terminal diagnosis was for you, Tim. I stated it quietly but clearly. A silence fell in the hospital room, and both Tim and my MIL were dumbfounded. Breaking the silence, I added, you left before the re-examination. So, I had to hear the results instead. I told you to go to the hospital and to check the results multiple times. I spoke calmly. Tim stared at me in disbelief. I continued, explaining step by step about the day he received the terminal diagnosis and how he ignored the doctor's advice. You threw away the healthy meals I made, didn't you? You ate out, drank, and spent time with your mistress. If you had listened, you might have received proper treatment and been cured. It's unfortunate. At that moment, Tim finally understood the situation and his face turned pale. He suddenly sat up and grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. No! Tell me it's a lie! I'm not the one who's dying, right? Tell me! Tim broke down in tears, shaking me weakly. But I no longer felt any sympathy for him. I'm sorry it's not me, but you trampled on all my support and pursued your selfish desires. I spoke coldly. When I told you about the terminal diagnosis, you said it was your own fault. And it turned out to be true. You mistreated me, thinking I was the one with the prognosis, and now it's come back to haunt you. You're a hopeless fool. What? How can you say that? You should take it easy, stressing out will only shorten your life. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not going to die. This is all your lie. Delusions. If you don't believe me, I can bring the diagnosis here. I can call the doctor to confirm it for you if that's what it takes. Ignoring Tim's outburst, I continued calmly. He began to tremble, hugging himself. He kept repeating, it's a lie. I don't want to die. I sneered, adding insult to injury. But you enjoyed yourself, didn't you? These past 6 months, spending time with your mistress and mistreating me, must have been fun. Yes, I have a future with her. Why am I the one who's dying? This is absurd. His repeated words were not apologies or gratitude but resentments. Thinking that I was the one with the terminal diagnosis, treating me like a disposable object, his actions were truly monstrous. The thought of it sent chills down my spine. But Tim's misunderstanding and behavior led to his downfall. My MIL, who also misunderstood, hugged Tim and cried, "Why him? He's still so young." She added, "I wish it had been Mia," without malice. Realizing their hopeless mindset, I finished explaining everything. The room fell silent, except for my MIL's sobs. Tim lay weakly on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt there was nothing more to say or reason to stay. I had initially felt sorry when he received the diagnosis, but it revealed his true nature. The pain and anger from being told to eat from the trash and to die wouldn't disappear. I stood up and bid farewell to Tim and my MIL. "That's it, then." Suddenly, my MIL, who had been crying, turned to me with wide eyes and shouted, "You think this is the end?" I calmly replied, surprised. "It is the end. Tim ended it himself. Don't be ridiculous. As his wife, you should stay and take care of him. Your value is in serving your husband." The MIL's unexpected fury made me reply with, "Huh? You gave me the divorce papers yourself. We are strangers now." "No, that was just yesterday. The papers haven't been filed yet. I have no intention of letting them be filed. You will continue to serve Tim. You're not getting away." "Not getting away? What are you talking about? Did you really think I was hesitant to file the divorce papers?" Fed up with her irrational argument, I spoke firmly. "I've already filed the divorce papers. We're already strangers, completely unrelated." Tim was also startled and looked shocked. "I intended to file the papers at my timing for the insurance money. Give it back once it's signed." Who would comply with Tim's demands from yesterday? I had seemed meek to support the sick Tim, but my heart never yielded to him and I never intended to obey his words. If he thought I was hesitant about the divorce because of lingering feelings, he was gravely mistaken. "Don't think you can keep me bound for your convenience forever." I continued speaking to them both. "Of course, you'll have to cover the medical expenses yourself. I doubt Tim, who squandered everything, can afford it." I said this with a slight smile, taunting my MIL. "You ungrateful woman. You demon. Trash. Disgrace." My MIL contorted her face and shouted insults like a child. "This is a hospital, please be quiet. And, aren't you the real trash here?" I replied calmly, with a broad smile. My MIL, looking frustrated and out of insults, ground her teeth. "No matter how much you attack me with words, Tim's situation won't change. And don't expect me to help even if you beg now." Tim, looking even more pale, pitifully clung to his MIL. "Mom, what should I do? I can't pay for the treatment. I spent almost everything, expecting Mia's insurance money. I don't want to die." I was right. Tim had blown through almost all his money, living it up with his mistress, expecting my insurance payout. Despite my attempts to stop him, he had maxed out his credit cards, and now he would receive bills with unimaginable amounts. I was truly glad I had separated our accounts. With his weakened body, he would have to take a leave from work. How did he plan to live from now on? Seeing his pathetic state, I had an idea and made a suggestion. "What about your young and cute mistress? Maybe she can help?" Neither Tim nor my MIL caught my sarcasm. "Yes. That girl must be kind unlike this demon wife. Let's contact her immediately." Using Tim's phone, my MIL tried calling the mistress repeatedly, but there was no response. Not even a ring, it seemed she had blocked the calls. "Why isn't she here, anyway? You were with her on the trip?" I asked, and Tim weakly replied. "Right after I collapsed, she ran off to get help. I haven't seen her since." "Maybe she ditched you?" "Funny. You and she were only worth that much to each other." I laughed, and Tim's face twisted in despair. "No. She wouldn't abandon me. We pledged our love. She'll come back. Maybe she doesn't know which hospital I'm in." He muttered incoherently, but neither the mistress nor any call ever came. As I was about to leave the room, Tim and my MIL desperately clung to me, begging for money. They must have realized they couldn't manage without me. But I had no reason to be involved in such a future. Please, Mia. Forget everything and start over with me. I've been given a terminal prognosis. Can you really abandon someone like that? You told me, I don't care about you, just die already. Those were your words when you thought I was the one with the prognosis, right? I questioned, and Tim faltered. So I'll return those words to you. Remember what you said. When we first met, he was kind, if a little unreliable. But his true nature gradually emerged, and our relationship became distorted. Even when I found out about his affair, I tried to support him. Yet, he trampled on my feelings and severed our bond. I had no sympathy left for such a person. Shrugging off Tim's tearful grasp, I delivered my final words. Consider me dead as you planned. Goodbye. I heard their voices calling me to stop, but I no longer paid attention. I left the hospital room, returned home, and moved back to my parents' house that same day. I had already packed my things, ready to leave at any moment. At first, my parents were dismayed to hear about my divorce, but once they learned that Tim had been splurging on his mistress, expecting my insurance money, they quickly understood. Despite everything, my ex-MIL kept coming to my workplace, tearfully pleading, "Lend me money for the treatment," or "We don't have enough for the surgery." But I would just dismiss her, saying, "Why don't you ask your new daughter-in-law," and send her away. It seemed she still couldn't contact the mistress, and I laughed, thinking she might have run away. When my ex-MIL wouldn't leave, I called security to escort her out, warning her that I would call the police if she ever came to my office again. Rumor had it that she took out massive loans from shady lenders to cover Tim's surgery, which was successful. However, they were now being hounded by debt collectors daily, and I had no idea where they were or what they were doing afterward. On the other hand, freed from Tim and his mother, I decided to focus on my career and diligently worked hard. As a result, I steadily climbed the ranks and became the first female executive in the company's history. In my new role, I actively contributed to the company's growth, feeling fulfilled every day. Alongside my professional success, my personal life flourished as I cherished time with friends and family. Having regained my freedom, I led a fulfilling life both at work and in my private time, feeling happy as I faced new challenges.